In this art of the scene, we're talking about a fight that is so awesomely violent, the filmmaker's defense of it managed to spawn a meme all the way back in 2003.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Chan. Get it?
That's right. We're talking about Quentin Tarantino's love letter to spaghetti westerns, samurai films, and kung fu flicks, Kill Bill Vol.1. So, cue the kitschy coming attraction music because we're breaking down the crazy 88 fight to ask a question that cuts to the core of Quentin Tarantino's genius. Where does homage end and originality begin? This is Art of the Scene. Before we start, I gotta say, this video isn't meant to be an exhaustive list of Kill Bill's cinematic references. There's an excellent Vanity Fair video on that which I linked to in the description. Instead, we're highlighting key moments in the crazy 88 fight to see exactly how Quentin contorts movie references to make a sequence that creates a recognizable homage to the films that inspired him, but still feels uniquely Tarantino at the same time.
This ain't no squirrely amateur. This is work of a solid dog.
Maybe we should think of Tarantino as a cinematic collage artist. Where a traditional collage artist constructs their visions out of other works, Tarantino employs a similar creative approach but with film references, and he's certainly not the first to take this approach.
I think Kill Bill has the same relationship with 70s grindhouse cinema that Raiders of the Lost Ark had with 1940s and in the late 30s movie serials. They took the parts of it that they liked the best, and they kind of reinvented it and made it work not only for a new audience, but just for an audience that wasn't as familiar with it as they are, and did it the way they've always wanted to do it, but keeping all the aspects they liked. All right, that's what I tried to do with all the grindhouse exploitation cinema that I love.
But here's the thing. Kill Bill is more than a film that just borrows tropes from one genre to incorporate it into another. Tarantino goes a step further by fusing the genres together, and while this blend of East and West works across the whole movie, it's on full bloody display in the crazy 88 fight. So let's just jump right into how that fight is the perfect blend of Eastern and Western influences. This moment right here, as the bride calls out o-ren, embodies Tarantino's talent for using multiple movie homages to efficiently convey exposition, establish tone, and kick off a fight scene with a memorable bravado. Starting with this split screen shot, Tarantino allows us to simultaneously watch both the bride and o-ren as o-ren realizes the bill is about to come due for her past transgressions. The power discrepancy between the bride and o-ren is obvious as o-ren stares down at the bride from the safety of her balcony. But the moment is clearly on the bride's side thanks to a driving beat of Ennio Morricone's score from Death Rides a Horse. And everything about this song, from the driving guitar to the chanting of the revenge-laced lyrics, helps to auditorily stoke the tension between the bride and the queen of the Yakuza. This double exposure shot right here is yet another Death Rides a Horse homage, which, true to the shot's original narrative use, reminds us of the protagonist, i.e. the bride's motivations.
It's your ring.
But unlike the original, Tarantino adds audio cues to maximize the psychological effect of the editing technique. By combining those visuals with the anger siren from Five Fingers of Death, a reference which that film borrowed from Quincy Jones's theme from Ironside, it creates an audio-visual sensation that's almost Pavlovian. Every time you hear it, you can't help but think of revenge.
The whole combination of the right piece of music, all right, with the right visual image, I really think is one of the most exciting things you can do in movies. There's a reason why people remember it in my movies, because when you do it right, it's really memorable.
Tarantino knew the cerebral camera language at play here is an extraordinarily efficient storytelling tool. It takes less than 10 seconds for the film to show, not tell, the bride's murderous motivation, before smash cutting to a cinematic trope lifted from the other side of the globe, the squib. In the West, squibs have been used for gunshots pretty much since the beginning. But the blood geyser squibs in Kill Bill were pioneered by a filmmaker very familiar to this channel, Akira Kurosawa. This shot from Sanjuro was the first time a squib was used for exaggerated effect, and it profoundly affected Asian movie violence, influencing graphic depictions of blood in both anime and live action for decades. Films like Lady Snowblood were the natural evolution of the hyper-violent squib shot, and Kill Bill was the natural evolution from Lady Snowblood. From the moment the bride calls out o-ren ishii to the moment Sophie Fatale is left bleeding out on the floor, only 2 minutes have passed. 2 minutes! And in that time, Tarantino has referenced multiple films and songs that span decades, genres, and countries, all to create the mere introduction of a fight.
Charlie Brown.
More than that, this sequence also highlights Tarantino's ability to recall and repurpose obscure but emotionally effective cinematic moments and combine them to quickly convey a ton of information while creating something that feels completely new and original in the process. And this isn't the only part of the Crazy 88 fight that stands out because of Tarantino's masterful blend of influences. It was actually more of an hors d'oeuvre before the main course, when the cavalry arrives. There's a ton going on in this fight sequence, and while this was far from the first fight in the film, it is the fight that most directly tested Quentin's skills as a director.
I've always considered action directors the greatest movie directors in the world. If you can do action well, then you're the greatest. So the whole idea on Kill Bill was to test the limits of my talent.
Okay. Action!
The Crazy 88 fight would have been a cinematic accomplishment for any veteran director. It takes a big vision to direct a scene featuring dozens of special effects and stunt performers, especially when trying to choreograph their fights to include a healthy dollop of movie references. And that doesn't include the sheer amount of confidence it needs to rely on multiple music cues and tectonic shifts in the fight's visual style to make the roughly 15-minute uninterrupted fight continuously engaging. And it all starts with how Tarantino visualizes the sheer amount of bodies the bride is going to have to hack and slash through after all of o-ren's henchmen poured into the restaurant. Recreating a shot from Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, Quentin turned it into a more dynamic crane shot that really conveys how much the odds are stacked against the bride. But she's not deterred. And knowing a good moment when he sees one, Tarantino's inclusion of the army getting spooked really puts a cherry on top of this shot right before it's about to rain blood. As the bride slashes her way through Green Hornet masked stunt performers, Tarantino drops a relentless batch of homages that satiate the audience's bloodlust, but also establish the frenetic energy of the early battle. This eye pluck, it's a reference from the 1972 kung fu film 5 Fingers of Death. On one level, this horribly violent act is an homage to the 70s grindhouse kung fu that was a major inspiration on the film. On another level, it's a brilliantly flimsy excuse for the film to cut to black and white, which helped cover up the film's true reason for it, to avoid an NC-17 rating. To get that R rating, the MPA wanted Tarantino to cut down on the gore, but he knew that egregious amounts of blood were crucial to the vibe of the film.
Mada, inochi ga aru mono, sore wa motte kaeru ga ii! Tadashi, nakushita te ashi wa oitette morau yo. Kore wa mou watashi no monda.
He told the New York Times, "I could have taken out the geysers of blood, but that would have made the scenes more brutal and make it more violent as opposed to stylized." Consequently, he arrived at an ingenious solution. Just make it black and white. He said that desaturating the fight made the movie go down easier with the MPA, and further quipped that Americans didn't have a problem with blood, but had a problem with the color red. Free of the prudes of the MPA, the black and white cinematography ensured his hyper-violent homages were allowed to stay. In relatively quick succession, 3 references spanning multiple genres and decades are brutally strung together. Besides the eye gouge from 5 Fingers of Death, he used this axe throw from Navajo Joe, a 1966 spaghetti western starring Burt Reynolds, and this poor hench getting split in half, that's from Takashi Miike's Ichi the Killer. While plenty of ink has been spilled on Quentin's overt and copious amount of references in his work, homages alone does not a good scene make.
Cool. Very good.
The Crazy 88 battle is very clearly a movie fight, not a realistic fight cinematically captured. It is a violent ballet choreographed for an audience of one, the camera. And in doing so, Quentin uses music and visual cues in both subtle and brash ways to give the scene strong emotional beats without slowing down any of the action. A big part of this scene's soundscape and visual style is the seamless melding of Eastern and Western influences into the final product, and those influences are clear right from the beginning. Before the fight even begins, Tarantino uses Woohoo, a rockabilly cover by the Japanese garage rock band the 5678, as an upbeat pop song that plays during the Steadicam oneer that gives the audience the lay of the restaurant. We've already talked about the showdown where Morricone's Death Rides a Horse score, but conspicuously, there's no music during the early fights until the Crazy 88 show up on their motorcycles.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you? You know, for a second there, I kind of did.
As o-ren Ishii's army and the bride stare each other down, he uses one of the few originally produced scores for the movie. The first part of Crane/White Lightning by RZA and Charles Bernstein is used in an audio cue to build tension as warriors size each other up. After a ton of slashing and gashing, the film eventually returns to the second part of the song, which is part of Bernstein's original score from the 1973 Burt Reynolds movie White Lightning. Originally, the song was used to build tension as Burt Reynolds' gator nonchalantly breaks out of prison, but Tarantino uses it for a different purpose. He uses it to convey the current emotional state of the bride. At this point, she's been fighting for what seems like forever, and for the moment she feels overwhelmed. That sentiment is also echoed in her defensive fighting style as she uses the goon currently impaled on her sword as a human shield. Soon enough, the bride gets her second wind, illustrated by the human beings Nobody But Me. And the tonal shift of the exuberantly arrogant track about the singer's dancing prowess perfectly mirrors the ballet of blood as the bride works her way upstairs. Quentin's use of quick music cue changes is emblematic of the way he constantly uses music to shift the vibe of the action. From the use of Woohoo during the establishing Steadicam shot to right now, Tarantino has changed the music 9 different times. But music wasn't the only tool at Tarantino's disposal to keep the audience interested in the fight scene. Starting in full color, the fight eventually desaturated into an MPA-friendly black and white, and in a blink of an eye, it would change again. Of course, the silhouetted fight is a direct homage paying tribute to the opening credits of Samurai Fiction. But, typical with Tarantino, this moment also functions on more levels than a mere superficial homage. First, kudos to Quentin for taking the time to frivolously motivate the cut back to color with another eye-related action. I just really appreciate that kind of attention to small detail. But the genius of the silhouette fight is how he kills 3 birds with 1 stone. First, it's a spot-on homage to Samurai Fiction. Second, the blue silhouette fight adds yet another visually distinct moment to the scene. And finally, the silhouette still hides all the squib blood for the MPA. For his first action movie, Tarantino managed to pull off a ton of bold creative decisions, speaking directly to the core of Tarantino's persona as a filmmaker. He's an artist who has seen what seems like every movie ever and has the confidence to take huge stylistic risks to create something that feels familiar and wholly original at the same time. And that conflict between the familiar and the unconventional, and between the homage and the original, is at the center of Tarantino's charm as a filmmaker. The border between homage and originality is porous for sure, but at what point did Tarantino actually transcend the homage? Or is it just an exercise in futility to try and find the singular moment in which Kill Bill became objectively original?
Who's the bride?
When trying to contextualize the originality of Quentin's creativity, it helps to look at an analog in another art form, collages. In 1956, English artist Richard Hamilton created the iconic collage, Just What Is It That Makes Today's Homes So Different, So Appealing? This work is considered an early precursor to the pop art movement, a movement which later would include works from artists like Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol. But back to the collage for a second. What makes this collage so interesting to look at is its use of magazine pictures and other types of mass media to showcase an air quotes American Adam and Eve in their crowded home, complete with all the modern conveniences of the post-war American consumer boom. When looking at that jacked dude holding a Tootsie Pop, you don't think, oh, that's just Zabo Kazuski from Tomorrow's Man magazine. It's just Adam trying to impress Eve with his Tootsie Pop. There's also a Jack Kirby illustrated comic cover in there, and a famous photo of the movie theater showing the jazz singer as well. While every object in that collage was taken from an unrelated work, it's the relationships created by their combination in this collage that makes the image stand out as its own unique work of art, completely independent from the sources that made it. Tarantino's films work in a similar fashion. It's not just an homage to signal that he's familiar with the genre's previous works. He uses homage in a way that recontorts or leverages its inherent ability to communicate narrative to amplify a specific element of his film. And Tarantino's deep knowledge of the genres that influence Kill Bill is what makes the Crazy 88 fight so damn good. He knows cinema is a language and has a verbose vocabulary of references that he used to make an action scene that not only pays tribute to the past, but also acts as a new benchmark that pushes the aesthetic bar of what fight scene cinematography can look like moving forward. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all are enjoying these art of the scenes. I'd like to do a fan suggested one next, so please recommend a scene in the comments below. In the meantime, please check out our art of the scene on the Copa shot in Goodfellas, or the excellent Vanity Fair video that breaks down a ton more Kill Bill references than I did.